Hello and welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be looking at a message I received from someone recently that I'm working with. Now, this is the context. The individual has signed up for mentoring services, but has no going concern, has no idea for a business. So, now this is the message. And I'm going to try and. Okay, there's nothing here that gives away the identity, so I'll just read it as it is. So, so the message begins. About my going concern, it isn't something I can just rush into because it requires a great deal of time and effort, which I'm trying to pave the way for. When to start is not an excuse. I learned that, but I can't start a business that's going to pack up after the first trial, so I'm taking my time to strategize. So that's the message. Just to paraphrase so that we get the larger context, the lady, she says that concerning her business concerns, she's not going to rush into anything because it requires a great deal of time and it requires a great deal of effort, and she's trying to prepare for that. So, a start date is not an excuse. She can start whenever she's ready, and that is something that she has learned with her previous studies with another institution. That's not studies with me. Oh, by the way, I don't have study courses per se because I'm dealing with people, or rather, I try to deal with people who have an idea, who are gaining some level of traction, and who want to take things up a notch. So I don't have classes, like you sit down and you study entrepreneurship 101 and then move through to something 102 and then 103. So I don't have that. But yes, she has gone through those sorts of classes with another institution in Lagos where they run you through the whole thing, sort of like an entrepreneurship boot camp. So the start date is not an excuse, and she has already learned about all the prelim stuff that she needs, but she's not going to start a business that is going to pack up after the first trial, and so she's taking her time to strategize. And so that's the reason why right now she doesn't have a going business concern that both of us can talk about and I can help her out with. So this raises a bunch of other questions that I would like us to tackle. The questions that I'm going to come up with from this message are by no means exhaustive. So if after listening to this episode you think that there's something that I missed out, there are some engagement tools in Spotify. At the end of the episode, there are those speech bubbles, those text bubble things. You can hit one of those and you can send me a message, and I'll see it, and then I'll know that, okay, perhaps this is an obvious question that I missed that I should have tackled. If you are listening to the podcast in Anchor, you can hit one of those speech bubbles and then send me a voice note, and hopefully if I'm tech savvy enough, I'll be able to figure out how to incorporate your audio message into the next episode. If not, I'll just listen to the voice note and then respond to it. So if you think there are other questions that I could have addressed by the end of the episode, hit me up, let me know, or connect with me on LinkedIn, and we will do a follow up to this podcast episode. So, the first question: when is the best time to start a business? This individual is a university student, final year, schoolwork, other distractions, studies with this other entrepreneurship institute in Lagos. So, yes, it's a busy time in her life. But then again, it is a busy time in everybody's life. So, I'm a father, married, two sons, a bunch of other things that I'm trying to do on the side. And you, dear listener to the podcast, you might be the same way. You might be a new father as well, lawyer, legal practice, looking for other side hustles to do. Or you could be a young mom, two kids, you studied architecture, currently trying to get your real estate business up and running. Bottom line is, sometimes it looks like our circumstances are unique and heavy and difficult and peculiar or particular to us. But if you look at things in the larger context, that's not really the case, because there's nobody who isn't having a difficult time at the moment, and there's nobody who's having a walk in the park at the moment. In fact, there are some of us, like me, with two kids, the lady, also with two or three children, who's trying to get the real estate business up and running, and the man who is a lawyer and who is a new father with one kid, who is trying to get a side hustle while working full time as a lawyer. There are some of us, in fact, who would look back at this young lady and say, "What are you talking about? You are in university, you have no distractions, you have no responsibilities, you're still living at home with your parents. Now is the time to start and to dig in." So I'm not trying to make light of our circumstances, but I'm just trying to say that if we always focus on the things that could be holding us back, the number of children that we have, the financial responsibilities that we have, the schoolwork that we have to do, what else? The family responsibilities on our head, or the church responsibilities because you're an elder in church or whatever, there will never be the perfect time to start a business because everybody has personal circumstances that are distracting and weighing them down. So, what is the best time to start a business? I can't give you that answer. Gauge your personal circumstances, but just know that there will always be an excuse. By the time you're done with schoolwork, and you submitted your school thesis, the next thing is going to be you're trying to work out your NYSC, your National Youth Service Program. After you're done with that, if your program is one that has requires a period of tutelage or internship or industrial attachment, then that will be the next thing you're trying to work out your industrial attachment. After you work out your industrial attachment, the next excuse is going to be that, okay, you now have to hit the job market because you can't keep staying at home doing nothing. So you need to get a job that brings in a 9 to 5 so that mommy and daddy don't think that you're just staying there and collecting their money and then doing nothing. And then it'll be that. And then after a while, you will start dating, and then your partner might not be that understanding, or your partner might have different ideas about which the business should go. And then next thing, you are married and you're focusing on building a home. Then, oops, you didn't plan for it, but then the children are here, and then now you're a mother, and then on and on and on and on and on. So if we're looking for things that are going to hold us back, it never stops. So gauge your personal circumstances. Just pick a time that you're comfortable with, and then just begin, because the circumstances are never going to be perfect. You are not going to wake up one day and not going to have responsibilities, and not going to have distractions, and not going to have other things that are weighing you down. The only time that that happens is between the ages of 0 and 3. But by the time you hit 4 years old, you're already in nursery school and you already have some distractions, homework, teacher palaver, blah, blah, blah. And bullies, other children in the school that you don't like, people that try to take your lunch. So, except if you're 0 to 3, that ideal time is not going to come. The ideal time has passed. So, look at your personal circumstances and then just start. Now, can you ever strategize enough? We need to be careful about analysis paralysis. Analysis paralysis is the idea that you're analyzing and then thinking, and I should do this, and I could do this, and I could do this, and I could do this, and the list of could do's and ought to do's and maybe we should do, they just keep growing and growing and growing and growing. The reason why they grow is because you can't anticipate all the major criteria that can affect your business. For instance, for those of us in Nigeria, think about the last couple of months, the change in interest rates. Who could have thought? Who could have anticipated? Well, maybe for those people who have knowledge in finance, like my wife, she's doing CFA. She's a level 2 CFA. That's the Chartered Financial Analyst. So maybe those kind of folks knew, maybe from last year, that okay, interest rates are going to change. Getting business financing is going to be tough. But for the average person like you and me listening to the podcast, we have absolutely no idea when interest rates are going to change and how easy it is that it's going to be able to get a loan. Then there was a Naira redesign policy. Well, some people say it was a fiscal thing. Some people say it was to battle corruption. Whatever it is, the thing is it happened and it caused the cash crunch. And for those businesses that are cash intensive, like let's go back to our orange juice example that we used a couple of episodes ago. If you're an orange juice guy and you're getting your oranges from Benue State and from Taraba, the best ingredients that you can find in Nigeria, that's cash intensive. The villagers need their cash. They are not going to take a transfer. Because as far as they're concerned, you're talking transfers and all whatnot, that's just witchcraft or it's just BS, So, you want my oranges? It's going to be 20,000 naira. You better bring my 20,000 naira hard cash. So, if that was your business, who could have anticipated that that sort of thing was going to happen? Because, yes, the central bank governor said some stuff in December the year before, November or December the year before. But then this is Nigeria. Our politicians and our policy leaders, they say things all the time and they don't follow through. And then if you go back a couple of years ago, 2-3 years back, there was the coronavirus. And then there's currently right now, there's the risk from electoral cycles Because we're done with the presidential elections, and then we still have, I think, Kogi State and a couple of other states that have to run their own elections. So depending on where you live, there's the risks from the electoral cycles, the disruption or the violence or whatever. But the bottom line is, there's some things you can't anticipate at all. So how could you possibly analyze and anticipate and plan for all these things? You can't. And that is what leads to analysis paralysis. You get a couple of things and you think, okay, this is all that I have to deal with. And then you wake up next week and then, okay, there's another something that I have to do before I get out of the way. And the list of things that you have to do before you start this business keep growing and growing and growing. And then what happens is, since you don't have a clear plan of, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to tackle 1, 2, and 3, because there's a list of 20 or 30 things, you end up doing nothing. Somebody comes over, you attend to them, you guys just a little bit. After that, you watch a couple of movies, and then you have some things at the office to take care of, or maybe you have to attend to the children, and then before you know it, it's another day. And then another day passes, and then 2 weeks have passed, and then 2 months have passed, and then 2 years have passed, and then you haven't started your idea because you're trying to strategize. If you think that this sort of thing doesn't happen, I was at a session, was organized by the British Council. This was years ago. And they were talking to a tech crowd, and they gave an example about somebody who had been talking about his idea for a brilliant app. The person who was speaking happened to know some people in the crowd, and he was trying to make a point. So when the time came, he asked the question to somebody in the crowd. So he's talking about the person that had this brilliant idea for the app. What's the app about? He doesn't want to discuss with anybody. He doesn't want to share with anybody because people might steal his ideas. He's still planning. He's still thinking about how to develop the idea and blah, blah, blah. And so after the speaker went on and on about this brilliant idea, he pointed to somebody in the crowd and he was like, you know who I'm talking about, right? The person said yes. And then the person said, okay, how long ago was this and how far with the project? How far has the person gone? And the guy answered, this was about 2 years ago. And we were all shocked, but it's a true life story. The person had this idea for the brilliant app. He was thinking, he was strategizing, he was planning. He didn't discuss with any of his friends. He didn't want anybody to see anything because they would steal his idea. And he's still trying to refine it and make it perfect and blah, 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 blah. But that was 2 years ago. Nobody still knows about what the app is. The thing hasn't hit the market. He hasn't gained any traction on it. But meanwhile, his friend, who was now up on stage, had got their own app up and running, got some financing. They're not millionaires, they haven't hit it, but at least they're still moving forward because they are not trying to strategize and plan and analyze every single thing. So, with this whole thing about planning and strategizing, is it strategy that should be worried about, or is it market validation that we should be worried about? These are two different concerns. The concern about strategy is how are we going to execute this thing? How are we going to move along? So you have to analyze so you know how you execute. But then number two, market validation. The concern about market validation is this idea a valid one? And I think that's what you should be paying attention to first. You should be doing the work to show, does the market show any promise around this idea? Does the market show us that this idea is workable? Because before you worry about strategy and execution, you have to worry about whether this is a good idea that is worth working on in the first place. For instance, Facebook. Facebook, first of all, had to show to their investors that people are going to use this weird thing that we call a social network. They had to demonstrate that first and that people want to use it. It was only after they were able to prove that they're now worried about world domination. How do we move from Harvard campus to anyway, I don't know about American universities. Was Zuckerberg in Harvard? Okay, let's just assume it was Harvard. How do we start with Harvard campus and then we move to Massachusetts, Boston University? And then from there to Boston, and then from Boston to San Francisco, and then we cover all of America. Then from America, before we worry about India, and then from India to Africa. But first of all, you had to prove this new thing called the social network. Will people sign up? Will people use it? That's the first step. You don't just sit there in your dorm room or in your house and then you're planning about world domination. You need to figure out first market validation. Is this business idea a valid one? Does it show any promise? Do people want this idea? It's the same thing with Dangote. First of all, he finished exploring viable markets for cement in Nigeria before he went into local production. You don't sit down there and then draw up the grand plans for how you're going to raise finance and build your cement factory and everything. You figure out, are people going to buy cement in this country or not? And then, if people are going to buy cement, and your distributorship is moving, then you can worry about setting up your factory. That's the same thing with Mr. Biggs. First, they showed that fast food franchises can work in Lagos, and after they figured out that it works in Lagos, then they rolled it out nationally. And then you have Mr. Biggs in Benue State, where I'm from. You have Mr. Biggs in Ibadan. I had to pass through that to get to my university. You have Mr. Biggs in Abuja, where I currently live. Although for some reason, I don't see the franchises around anymore. But you get the point. They showed first that it worked in Lagos before you roll it out. So you shouldn't be worried about your plans and strategy and all whatnot. Execution is good, but you're not at that stage yet if you don't have a business. What now we should be thinking about is market validation. Let's approach the market. Let's see if the market will give us any signs that there's any promise in this idea. If it looks like this idea is promising, then we can now sit down and start worrying about execution. How are we going to roll this out? How are we going to capture this market? How are we going to go here? How are we going to execute this? How are we going to execute that? Now, another question. Is there any business idea that is fail-proof? Because this lady doesn't want to fail. Unfortunately, there is no business idea that is fail-proof. But for some reason, the existence of Jeff Bezos has people thinking that you can start one business and then succeed with that and become a billionaire. Now, let's make this point painfully clear in case you don't know. Jeff Bezos is a unicorn, in quote. He is the only one among his contemporaries that has made it big with his first try. Most of the other people who you consider his contemporaries or his age mates or whatever have tried 3 or 4 times before they made it big with one idea. Everybody also likes talking about Steve Jobs. Yes, Apple made it big. But then his company Next, some people say it was a success, some people say it was not. But there were some other ideas that he tried out that didn't work. And it's the same in the Nigerian context as well. Dangote had a juice thing that he tried to introduce back when I was serving in Kano back in 2006 or maybe 2007. I mean, right now the juice is nowhere on the market. So Dangote cement, big thing. Dangote spaghetti, big thing. Dangote sugar and salt, big thing. But then he failed in the juice and he failed in a couple of other things. Did he have noodles? I can't remember if there was some Dangote noodles or something. But anyway, there's stuff that he has failed in. So yeah, it would be nice if the Jeff Bezos thing happens to you, that the first idea you pick, you blow, and you become a big billionaire or something. But that is exceedingly rare. Don't bank on that. Most people try a couple of times before they hit it big. There's no business idea that is fail-proof. And let's watch and see. This Amazon success is not going to last forever. There's no company that exists in perpetuity. Eventually, it's going to fail. It's just normal. It happens. Nothing lasts forever. There's no business idea that is foolproof. So stop looking for that foolproof business idea. Rather, look for where you can find market validation. It looks like this idea is workable. Then come up with a plan and then execute. And let's see. So my advice to anyone who is waiting anxiously around the corner is just start. Aim to validate your idea first. Try to sell your idea, try to sell your product, try to sell your service on a small scale first. If there's a hunger for it, then you worry about going full on later. For instance, this is a story, or rather, this is a scenario that should be relatable to most of us listening to this. Since Bezos and Dangote and all the big boys, that looks like it's a long way away. So let's look for something much more relatable. You're a cake artist. You like baking, or your sister likes baking, or whatever. Start first by selling some cupcakes at the office or sell them in church. That is part of market validation. Do I have the skills? Do people like the taste of my stuff? Does it look like this is the kind of stress that I'm willing to go through? So, make some cupcakes. Sell them at the office. Sell them at your father's office. Sell them in church. Sell them at the youth group. After that, your sister's friend is getting married. Offer to bake her wedding cake. See what the experience feels like. Do people love the cake? Is it a hit? Is it a miss? See how it goes. After that, you cannot worry about what the business name should be, what the logo should be, where you will rent kitchen space, the massive ovens that you need to buy. You can worry about all of that later. Start first with selling cupcakes and baking cakes for your sister's friend's wedding or your brother's friend's wedding. So that's how you do it. If you just sit and you're waiting and you're planning and you're trying to anticipate, you're not going to do anything. Validate the idea first and then execute full on later. So, like I said, you might start with the cupcakes and then you might discover that actually you don't like baking. Or everybody loves the wedding cake, but you're like, man, this is a lot of stress. Even if somebody paid me 100K to go through this stress, I don't want to do this sort of thing again. Or you might discover that, people don't like your cakes, but they think that your jollof rice is spot on. And you might find out that even though you started off thinking you wanted to be a baker, you might end up abandoning the baking idea altogether, and maybe 4 or 5 years from now, you have a restaurant instead. So, if you're stuck thinking about what to do next and you need help with validating your business idea, connect with me on LinkedIn and let's see how we can get our money right. So, that's all for today. Remember, you can subscribe for free. The show is Sales for the Nigerian Business Person podcast. You can find me on any podcast player of your choice, definitely on Spotify, Google, Apple, Pocket Cast, Anchor, Overcast. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. The name is Tavishima Ayede. You're not sure of the spelling, you just have a look at the podcast profile after you're done listening. The spelling is there. Check me up on LinkedIn, and I'd love to make your acquaintance. So thanks for listening. I'll catch you guys at the next episode.